If you've been scrolling through endless lists of video conference kits, watching unboxing videos, and still feel that nagging doubt about which system actually fits your room and your budget, you're not alone. It's easy to get lost between all-in-one promises and the reality of wiring, mounting, and software quirks that only show up after you've already signed the check. That's why today's deep dive is all about cutting through the hype and figuring out whether the Logitech Rally Bar Mini plus Tap IP Graphite bundle really solves those hidden headaches, or if it's just another pricey box you'll end up swapping out. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's frame the problem. Small to medium meeting rooms. Think a huddle space for 4 people, a classroom breakout room, or a conference nook in a co-working hub need a camera, microphones, speakers, and a control surface, all of which have to work together without a tangled mess of cables. The usual DIY route is to buy a separate webcam, a conference speakerphone, maybe a Bluetooth remote, and then spend an afternoon wrestling with driver updates and compatibility settings for Zoom, Teams, or Google Meet. The Rally Bar Mini bundle promises to eliminate that juggling act by delivering a single bar that houses a 4K camera, an array of microphones, and integrated speakers, plus a dedicated Tap IP touch controller that lives on the wall. On paper, it sounds like the perfect plug-and-play answer. So, does it live up to that promise in the everyday world of a busy office? The biggest strength I've seen in real-life deployments is the simplicity of the initial setup. The bar connects to a single HDMI cable for video, a USB-C for power and data, and an Ethernet port for network access. Once you plug it into a compatible Android-based Microsoft Teams Room system or a Zoom Rooms appliance, or a Google Meet hardware hub, the software detects the hardware automatically. No driver installations, no manual calibration steps, just a straightforward add device in the room controller's admin panel. For a facilities manager who has to roll out 3 or 4 of these across a site, that level of out-of-the-box integration cuts hours of work. Another practical win is the AI-driven video and audio intelligence, branded as Right Sight and Right Sound. In a medium-sized room where people move around, the camera will automatically pan, tilt and zoom to keep the active speaker framed, and the microphone array will focus on the direction of speech while suppressing background noise. In my own test in a 6-person room with a whiteboard and a window that lets in street noise, the system kept the presenter centered even as they walked from the left side of the table to the right, and the audio remained clear without that echoey cave feeling you sometimes get from cheap speakerphones. That kind of hands-free adjustment is a real time saver. You don't have to designate a camera operator every meeting. Now, let's talk about the hidden trade-offs. The Rally Bar Mini is sized for rooms up to about 8 participants. The built-in microphones have a pickup range of roughly 3 meters, which works fine when everyone is seated around a rectangular table, but if you have a more spread-out layout, say a classroom-style seating with people at the back, the mic coverage can start to thin. Logitech anticipates that scenario with optional Rally mic pods that you can mount around the room to extend the pickup zone. The pods are an additional expense and require a bit more wiring, but they're the only way to preserve the no-dead zone promise in larger spaces. If you're buying the bundle for a room that's already pushing the 8-person limit, you should budget for at least 1 pod. Another subtle limitation is the speaker output. The Mini's integrated speakers are calibrated for a typical conference room size. They deliver clear, balanced sound for a handful of participants, but if you regularly host large presentations with videos, you may notice the volume peaks flatten out. In a test where I streamed a 1080p video clip with background music, the speakers reproduced the dialogue well, but the music felt a little subdued compared to a dedicated external sound system. That isn't a deal-breaker for most meeting scenarios, but if you rely on the hardware for client pitches that include high-energy media, you might want to pair it with a separate soundbar. From a sustainability standpoint, the bar's housing uses about 1/3 recycled plastic. That's a nice, tangible step toward greener office tech, and it shows Logitech is thinking beyond just performance specs. It doesn't affect the day-to-day experience, but for companies with ESG goals, it's a point you can actually mention in your procurement justification. Who should actually click Add to Cart on this bundle? If you're a small business owner or a facilities manager for a mid-size office that needs a reliable, all-in-one solution for rooms of 48 seats, this is a solid choice. The integrated controller, the Tap IP, lets you start a Teams or Zoom call with a single tap, adjust volume, mute the mic, or switch inputs without touching a laptop. It also works